Hi, I'm Donna McDonald from the Institute of Gerontology at Wayne State University, and I'd like to welcome you to a series of educational videos created to help you on your journey in caregiving, whether as a professional or a home-based caregiver. These videos were made possible by a grant called Functional Aging and Mindfulness for Seniors. This program is called The Importance of Self-Care. The presenter today is Dana Rizzo, who is a well-seasoned nurse with over 35 years in the field of nursing, not only in the hospital setting, but in senior living. She has a passion for education, so please welcome Dana Rizzo.
Hello, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. This is your first step towards self-care because you're interested in learning new things and how to take better care of yourself, because that will give us more social engagement and a better, longer life. So here we go. The unspoken truth about self-care is this. A common message that we have often heard is take care of yourself. You better take care of yourself. I heard it in college, graduate school. I heard it when I worked in the intensive care unit and critical care unit, and many times since. Self-care has been defined, though, as providing adequate attention to one's own physical and psychological wellness. And Beauchamp and Childress came up with that definition of self-care back in 2001. So self-care has been defined as providing adequate attention to one's own physical and psychological wellness. Now, we have been told by our doctors, our families, our directors, our advisors, our clinical supervisors, and our mentors, take care of yourself. But beyond being an aspirational goal, engaging in self-care has often been described as we know that it's considered an ethical imperative, and yet many of us don't take the time to do it. Do you know that there's even an ethics code as part of the APA that states that it's an ethical imperative that people take care of themselves, their own physical health and psychological health? Now, self-care is a struggle for most of us. Self-care is a struggle, and we often see it as an impossible task, especially if we are young parents, or perhaps we're caught in the sandwich generation and we're in our 40s, 50s, and 60s, and we still have kids in college or high school, and we still have aging parents. So when you're part of that sandwich generation, it's kind of difficult to say, oh, I'm going to carve out, an hour every day to take care of myself. Making time for balance in our lives to include outside activities, relaxation, sleep, to spend time with family and time with friends and have a little bit of fun. It seems like a distant goal. Sometimes we have the feelings of the symptoms of burnout. And when we experience those symptoms of burnout, that's our bodies telling us that our lives are not in balance. Symptoms of burnout include feeling fatigued and tired. You lose interest. You start making mistakes at work or on home projects. You have GI upsets. You have difficulty sleeping, insomnia. You have headaches, self-neglect, where you're not eating properly, you're not sleeping properly, irritability, we get cranky, we become forgetful, and we become more stressed. And all of these signs of burnout are telling us, it's our bodies telling us we need to slow down, we need to relax, we need to rest, we need to regroup, and we need to take care of ourselves psychologically and physically. The goals of self-care include that we need to be proactive and we need to be holistic in promoting our personal health and well-being. And they're talking about holistic. Holistic is referring to the whole person. We need to take care of the whole person. We need to realize that we are worthwhile and that we value our health, both physical health, psychological, and emotional health, and that we are worth taking care of. We need to develop personalized self-care strategies that we identify as important and meaningful. And we also need to identify barriers, and we need to find enablers that will help us practice our self-care practices. I was caught in the sandwich generation, and I had 7 years of taking care of loved ones, 7 different loved ones. And as the only nurse in the family, I was getting called a lot, and yet working full time. And I had a child in college and a child in high school. And I remember that my neighbor identified, her kids were both grown, they had graduated college, and she was my enabler. She would say, Dana, let's join the water aerobics class 3 nights a week. And she would call and say, are you picking me up? And we had it worked out where 1 week she drove, 1 week I drove. It was fantastic, because there were certainly days in the wintertime where I really didn't feel like getting into an enclosed pool, even though they said they heated it. It wasn't warm enough for me, but she was my enabler. She made sure that I never self-neglected and that I went to water aerobics, because once I got there, I was having the time of my life. And it was a holistic approach, because water aerobics took care of me physically, emotionally. It helped me socially, because I was with one of my dear neighbors and friends. And I think that I was able to take care of all 3 of these goals with really one activity. Now, self-care is defined by Sherman as the self-initiated behavior that people choose to incorporate to promote good health and general well-being. Self-care also means balancing care for others and balancing the care for yourself, and with the promotion of personal health and well-being central to its meaning. Self-care is more than a checklist to be completed within a set of allocated tasks. Self-care is described as a conscious and deliberate practice. Self-care, for instance, would be the following. But all of us have rituals and we have routines. So every morning I get up at 6:30, a half hour before I have to. I take care of myself. I brush my teeth. I floss. I take the medication that I need. I eat a quick breakfast, and then I go for a walk, a brisk walk, and then come back, get dressed for work, and go off to work. That is something where I have planned it. It's central to me before I have to get involved with my work requirements, my family requirements, and all of these other things. It's a very conscious and deliberate practice. I actually set my alarm for about 6:30. So I get up at 6:45, or 6:30, which allows me extra time. 6:15 is when I set my alarm. So I get up at 6:30, which allows me that 45 minutes to do all the things I have to do. The top secrets of self-care. Now, this is kind of frustrating. Many Americans culturally think that self-care is a waste of time. Isn't that sad? The American way is that a successful person is one who is always accomplishing greater and greater goals. If we were raised to think that sitting in a park 2 hours a day and relaxing was praiseworthy, we would be proud to take care of ourselves that way. They do that in other cultures. Our culture is really working against us. We need to give ourselves permission to do less. We will never have serenity if our task list is too long that it does not allow for a downtime. Self-care is restorative. We accomplish more when we are happier and have more stamina. The other thing about self-care is that it helps to build resilience. Resilience is a new word in 2022, and resilience has a lot to do with the way your body can handle extra stressors, like the extra stressor of having a sick loved one, having a sick child, the stressor of contracting COVID, or having a parent that contracts COVID. It's resilience, and the doctors are using that term now in documenting in a chart. They'll say this person has low resilience, moderate resilience, or high resilience. When I read that in a patient chart, the patient that has low resilience, I know I've got to take very, very good care of and keep an eye on them, because that person doesn't have energy that's going to help them to overcome this health crisis. So they're going to need careful watching. So it's so important that you are forewarned, and forearmed. So you want to build self-care so that it's not only building your resilience, but it's giving you restorative power to overcome any hurdle life gives you. The 4 categories to self-care include physical self-care. It's important to diet and eat properly. Your diet should be, Mediterranean diet is one of the better ones out there, mostly grains, vegetables, fruits, and very lean meats. You should exercise daily, even if that means just taking a daily stroll. Go to your medical doctors annually, get yourself checked out. Make sure that you're getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Take day trips or time off. I remember my boss told me one time, Dana, you have got something like 200 hours of paid time off. If you don't take them in the next couple of months, you're going to lose all of them. I would never take time off. I always felt so driven. And now I've learned my lesson, and I do take my time off, and I do enjoy it completely. The next category after physical self-care is psychological self-care. Do we take time for self-reflection? Do we practice mindfulness? Do we write in a journal? Do we read literature that we enjoy? Do we notice our inner self and what we want from ourselves? Do we practice receiving others? Are we curious about learning new topics? Do we know our inner self? Like, can you actually say to yourself, I'm Dana, and I know what I love. I love floral arranging. I love gardening. I enjoy swimming. I like going on nature walks. I like spending time with my children. I love spending time with my dog. Being able to identify what gives you inner peace helps you. Now let's look at our 3rd category, emotional self-care. You want to spend time with others whom you enjoy, people who raise you up. Stay in touch with friends. Praise yourself. Give yourself a pat on the shoulder when you've done something. Love yourself. Do comforting activities. If that's saying, oh boy, I'm going to take a power nap for 30 minutes this afternoon, that's a comforting activity. If it means sitting on a bench under a tree and reading the newspaper, or reading maybe a magazine that came in, that's comforting activities. Allow yourself to cry, find things that make you laugh, and play with children. All of these things will give you more emotional self-care. Spiritual self-care. That's the 4th category. You want to make time for reflection, of being grateful, practicing gratitude for the things that are positive in your life. Take nature trips. Find a spiritual connection, either with your community. Make sure that you cherish optimism and hope. Want to read inspirational literature. And that means you may want to stay away from the news. Don't read the newspaper late at night, because a lot of those alarmingly frightening stories will stay with you and on your mind through the night and could disrupt your sleep pattern. So read inspirational literature late at night before you go to bed. and identify what is meaningful to you. I remember that several patients that I worked with over the years, over my 35-year career, I learned every day. I used to make that a goal, that every day when I went to work, I would learn something new from someone, whether it be a doctor or another nurse or a patient. And I find that even in my current position working with senior living, that I learn from those seniors every day. I see them reading a book of poems, or I see them reading a book of jokes, and they're just laughing outrageously, and they're sharing the jokes with other people in a circle. And all of that gives me spiritual self-care, watching others having fun. That gives me joy. So the 4 categories to self-care are physical self-care, psychological self-care, emotional self-care, and spiritual self-care. So the self-care assessment worksheet, we have one of these, and Wayne State University has recorded this session, so you always have access to it. The assessment tool provides you an overview of effective strategies to help maintain your self-care. After completing the assessment, you can move on to developing a full self-care plan. And there's 2 handouts. You will be evaluating yourself in the 4 categories of physical self-care, psychological self-care, emotional self-care, and spiritual self-care. Here's your self-care checklist. And it says, identify your self-care needs. Physical self-care. I eat healthy, check it. I exercise often, check it. I sleep enough, I don't. Mental self-care. I meditate often. I use self-affirmations. Like today, I did a great job. I spend time alone to reflect and plan for the next day or for the rest of the day. Social self-care. I keep in touch with friends. I spend time with my family. I spend quality time with my husband. Emotional self-care. I know my own strengths and weaknesses. I have hobbies. I am comfortable expressing my feelings. And mom self-care. I know my kids' fears and wishes, or my grandchildren. I am a fun grandmom, or being a grandmother makes me happy. Now, this self-care assessment is a checklist mostly for moms, but grandmothers can use it as well as grandfathers and dads. Now, here is a self-care assessment worksheet that is looking at your physical self-care, psychological self-care, emotional self-care, and spiritual self-care. And it's scoring you 5 that you frequently have that you eat healthy, for instance. You frequently exercise. 4 is occasionally, 3 is rarely, 2 is never, and 1 is it never even occurred to me. Developing a self-care plan is page 2. You want to list the self-care habits that you are using now to manage stress and to stay healthy. For instance, I get at least 8 hours of sleep every night. You want to list the self-care habits you would like to use but are not currently practicing. And for me, it was getting up, a half hour early to go for that early morning walk. Someone wrote down practicing yoga regularly. One of the things, my goals is practicing mindfulness. I often sit at the end of the day and just practice mindfulness, where I'm very grateful for one thing that happened during the day. And I just focus my attention on that and practice. It's meditating, and mindfulness really here and now. You want to identify the obstacles keeping you from practicing these habits. For instance, I don't practice yoga regularly because I just don't have the time to do it. But maybe there's a yoga class in the evening that you could go to, or perhaps at lunchtime, you can watch it virtually and just do it in your own office or in your home. What solutions can you come up with to address the obstacles that you've listed? I could free up time for myself by watching less TV or waking up earlier. And that's what I did. Woke up earlier. I reread the self-care habits that I've written down, and I select one of the habits that I would like to begin practicing, and I complete them in the sentence below. So out of all of these things that you've identified, practice one self-care habit that you're going to commit to and you're going to begin using. And then identify, today I commit to getting up 30 minutes early every day to exercise. I want to do this because exercise will make me healthier. I will accomplish this by end of week. Okay, so that's how you develop a self-care plan. Now, quotes and thoughts to remind us to take care of ourselves. And this came from Good Housekeeping. And these are people that are extremely busy, successful, famous people. And they have tight schedules. But Shel Silverstein, he was in A Light in the Attic. He wrote a book. He says, how much good is inside a day? It depends how good you live them. So if you feel that life is good, then your outlook on life will be good. It says, allow yourself to enjoy each happy moment in your life. You know, taking that moment to smile at a child that you pass in the street or an elderly person will often bring a smile back to you. Love yourself first, and everything else falls in line. You really have to love yourself to get anything done in this world. And that was from Lucille Ball, and she made so many of us laugh. Dr. Seuss said, be who you are, say how you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. And that was Dr. Seuss. Sophia Loren said, beauty is how you feel inside, and it reflects in your eyes. It is not something physical. And that's so true. You know, sometimes we meet people along the way that seem to have an inner glow. And I always want to be around those people. And I always go out of my way to find them. Oscar Wilde said, to love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance, and that will help you with self-care. The Dalai Lama wrote, if you feel burnout setting in, if you feel demoralized and exhausted, it is best for the sake of everyone to withdraw and restore yourself. And we talked about restoration and restoring ourselves. And we talked about resilience. And even the Dalai Lama spoke about that. Gandhi said, strength does not come from physical capacity. It comes from an indomitable will. And that has to do with self-care and taking care of yourself spiritually, emotionally, etc. Maya Angelou wrote, as you grow older, you will discover that you have two hands, one for helping yourself, the other for helping others. And isn't that so true? Annie Lamott wrote, almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including ourselves. And you know how when we're having internet problems, we have to reboot. We have to do the same thing with our lives and with ourselves. We have to reboot, unplug, restore, and revitalize. And we can do that through self-care and practicing a lot of different techniques. We cannot direct the wind, but we can adjust the sails. And Dolly Parton said that. And she grew up having absolutely nothing. They were so poor. And look at her now. Louisa May Alcott wrote, keep good company, read good books, love good things, and cultivate your soul and body as faithfully as you can. And that really sums up what this is all about today, the importance of self-care. Stephen Covey wrote, be patient with yourself. Self-growth is tender. It's holy ground. There's no greater investment than self-growth and self-care. Here's a self-care checklist just to give you some ideas. Try something new that you enjoy, go on a nature walk, meditate, make a vision board. I have a vision board. My husband and I put it together for when I retire, and it's places we want to go. And on my vision board, I have Ireland, I have the Midwest, I have Lee Drummond's Ranch because I love the cooking channel. My husband has the mountains because he enjoys going into the mountains. We have ocean pictures because we plan on going to the ocean and spending time at the ocean. And we have family pictures that we're going to be spending a lot more time with our family. Now, you can take a long nap, give yourself credit, practice deep breathing. Deep breathing, if you do it a series of 3 times where you breathe in through your nose and you hold it for 3 seconds and then breathe out through pursed lips 3 times, that will release endorphins in your brain that elevate you and make you feel good. Cuddle a pet or cuddle another human. Human beings need to be touched about 11 times a day. And it could be something as little as just tapping someone's arm. I have a dear friend, and when she and I see each other, we always give each other a hug. Or if I see her in the lunch line at work, we often will pat her and say, have a good rest of the day. All of that counts. If I see a senior, a resident that I'm particularly fond of, he or she, we will walk together, and after we're done, they usually give me a hug, which makes me feel good and them feel good. Okay, you want to plan a fun day out, call a family member, do something for someone else, write in a journal, listen to a podcast, cook your favorite food, light a scented candle. Gratitude journaling. I worked with a lady who was she lived alone, she was divorced, but she always saw the downside of things. Her glass was half empty. And she went to a counselor, and the counselor said, I want you to start writing in a gratitude journal. So every morning in the journal, she would write what she was happy for and grateful for. And it really helped her. And it helped all of us because we worked side by side with her. And suddenly we saw more smiles in her and a lighter load. You want to compliment a stranger. It doesn't take any time to do that. Dance to music. You don't even have to dance well. I have 2 left feet. Eat nourishing food. Go to a workout class. I love me. Read a book. Declutter your living space. That's so important. Say yes to doing something fun. Buy something that makes you feel good. Take a break from social media. Okay, and that's the self-care checklist. Mayo Clinic has a free guide to self-care. And all you have to do is Google Mayo Clinic Guide to Self-Care, and you can have them send this out to you. They also have a book, and this handbook is a 4-step plan for resilient living. And it was written by Dr. Amit Sood. And this does have a price. I don't know what they charge for that, but you can also Google that through the Mayo Clinic Handbook for Happiness. It's a 4-step plan for resilient living, which means that you are going to be doing self-care. And it was by Dr. Amit Sood. And I want to thank all of you for being here today. Make sure that you take a nice nature walk, smell the roses, and enjoy life and taking good care of yourself. An investment in yourself will pay off in the long run. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you, Dana Rizzo.